This is your Sound Off Extra review for WWE Royal Rumble 2019 from Chase Field in Phoenix, Arizona. A show that some say might still be going on. In the time it took to finish this Royal Rumble pay-per-view, the XFL already debuted and folded. EC3 won 5 world titles and has been inducted into the Hall of Fame already. And you know, it's a shame too, because I thought that overall this was a very good show. But this did not need to go 7 hours. 7 hours from start to finish, including the 2-hour pre-show, which had 3 matches on it. You know, with WrestleMania, you go into it with the expectation that you're in for a long night. You know, you already know it going in. It's WrestleMania. It is what it is. But there was no reason for that last night. And I heard from a bunch of you in the UK, because we have a lot of international listeners and people who follow me on Twitter, and I got a whole bunch of tweets from you guys over there. I feel like an idiot complaining about the show, you know, running all the way to midnight almost, when the kickoff for all you UK folks was at 10 p.m. I heard from one person who tapped out at 5 o'clock in the morning and missed practically the entire men's Royal Rumble match. He just couldn't do it anymore. He tried. He tried to stay up for it, but he just couldn't do it. Those are the real victims. All the international people who want to watch this show live. I don't know how you guys do it. I really don't. The Twitter poll so far, almost 5,000 votes. We're already up over 4,800 votes in the poll, which is a pretty big number. 74% of you voted thumbs up. Only 26% of you voted thumbs down. And I agree with that. I echo that sentiment, despite the fact that I aged 20 years and had 3 kids last night in that time. We had 2 predictable Royal Rumble match winners, but they were the right winners. They were the right choices to go over in those Rumble matches, and that, to me, is what matters the most. Predictable does not always mean bad. Some people say, oh, it was so predictable. Look, I like a little bit I like surprises as much as anybody, but predictable does not always mean bad. If it's the right decision to make, predictable though it may be, you do it. And in this case, it made sense for Seth Rollins to win the men's Rumble and for Becky Lynch to win the women's Rumble. It would have been booking malpractice not to have Becky Lynch win that women's Royal Rumble match. So I thought the right people won. I actually thought the women's Rumble was better this year than the men's Rumble. Although I didn't think either one of them were all that great. I thought they were both good, but I enjoyed the women's one more than the men's. I thought both women's title matches were very good. We had a great Universal title match between Brock Lesnar and Finn Balor. And the one black mark on this show, and I never thought I would say this, but the one black mark on this show was the WWE title match between Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles. Which maybe I'll be kinder to that match if I go back and watch it over again. But I can tell you, and again, I never thought I would say this coming out of the show, that match bored me to tears. The work was solid, but it nearly put me to sleep. But I can't give a thumbs down to a show that had this much good stuff on it. So let's get right into it here. The kickoff show, they announced an NXT Halftime Heat special on the network for Super Bowl Sunday that's going to have a 6-man tag team match. It'll be Aleister Black, Velveteen Dream, and Ricochet taking on Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, and Adam Cole. It'll also be streaming on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube if you don't have a network subscription. They shit all over Maroon 5. Not on the kickoff, but later during the pay-per-view, they ran an ad for Halftime Heat, and they just took a big dump on Maroon 5, who are playing, I guess they're playing the Super Bowl halftime show. And so that was their way of promoting this. Why watch Maroon 5 when you can watch Halftime Heat? Which is true. Although I bet they wouldn't be saying that if it was their beloved Flo Rida performing on the halftime show. Shawn Michaels is going to be providing guest commentary for that Halftime Heat match, so get ready for a lot of, I love Shawn, but it's very difficult sometimes to listen to him when he gives interviews. Look, he's had a long career. He's taken a lot of chair shots to the head. That's what happens. But it's been 20 years since the one and only Halftime Heat special that aired on USA. They had the empty arena match for the WWF title. It was The Rock defending against Mankind, Very memorable match. I will always remember the scene in one of the offices that they brawled into, and the phone rings. And The Rock is kicking Mankind's ass, and he picks up the phone, and he's taking telephone calls as he's beating this man up. Very entertaining match. I will say that it is the perfect sort of thing, I think, for them to be doing on their own network. I think it makes total sense for them to go ahead and do something like this. Maybe they'll even do it Raw Bowl style. I know how many of you were around back then in '96 when they did the Raw Bowl. They have the lines drawn, I think, on the mat like a football field. They could have guys coming out wearing helmets. So they announced the attendance for this show here as 48,193. I love the look of the show. I love the dugout entrances. I heard from a few people who thought it looked amateurish. It looks like an indie show. And I'm like, this is why we can't have nice things, right? Why does everything always have to look the same? I like it when they go out of their comfort zone and we actually have a show that looks different. Do we really is it really that necessary to have gigantic LED boards and giant screens behind every entrance? Is it really necessary? Does it really bother you that much that we had little LED like strip screens along the base of the dugout there? Because I love the look of all the fans being behind the entranceway. So every time somebody came out, you saw all these fans sitting behind them. I thought it was cool. I'd like to see them do more of that. Unfortunately, they kept the roof closed for the show. But more disappointing than that, they closed the pool out in right field. That was tailor-made for some heavy machinery skits throughout the entire show, or at least an Otis Cannonball. So that was very disappointing. We kicked things off with the Raw Tag Team Champions Bobby Roode and Chad Gable. This was a last-minute addition. They were non-title, of course, taking on, I guess you would call them the Revival of Pain, Scott Dawson and Razar of AOP. This was very weird. First of all, as Roode and Gable are making their entrance, the cameraman is walking backwards as he's filming them, and he trips and falls. And so he took a bump. He took the first bump of the night, but to his credit, he kept on filming. So this guy was a trooper here. Enjoy your Botchamania cameo. We were told that Akam of AOP is injured, so their great idea here was to create a makeshift team made up of one half of the Revival and the other half of AOP. Two men that have never teamed before and have no business ever teaming together. If ever you needed an example of the state of the Raw Tag Team division, I give to you Exhibit A. Now, it's a win for the champions, I guess. Maybe that's what they were going for. Hey, we want to get these guys on this big show so they can be part of it, and we'll give the tag team champions an easy win. But although half the stadium was still empty, so they weren't exactly playing to a big audience, I don't know what this actually accomplished other than just getting these guys on the show. There was a miscommunication towards the end between Dawson and Razar that led to the neckbreaker moonsault combo on Dawson for the win. We had Rusev and Shinsuke Nakamura, last year's Royal Rumble winner, here on the kickoff show now, 1 year later, for the United States Championship. This was basic stuff. Nakamura was trying to undo the pad in the corner. Lana jumped up on the apron. She and Nakamura got into a shouting match with each other. Rusev came off the ropes. Nakamura ducked out of the way, and Rusev nailed his wife. Well, I mean, I'm sure he nails his wife every night, but not like this he doesn't. And this was not the final example of man-on-woman violence here on the show. Lana got knocked off the apron. She feigned a sprained ankle on the way down. As soon as I saw that, I immediately tweeted out, I said, boy, that would be an awfully nice spot for Becky Lynch to take in the Royal Rumble match if Lana is too hurt to compete. And with Rusev concerned for his wife, Nakamura nailed him from behind with a Kinshasa to the back of the head, scored the pin, and he has regained the United States Championship. A two-time U.S. champion now is Shinsuke Nakamura. So much for having Andrade Cien Almas take the title from Rusev, which is what I was kind of hoping they would do going into WrestleMania. We had a fatal four-way for the Cruiserweight Championship. Buddy Murphy defending against Akira Tozawa, Kalisto, and Hideo Itami. This started very quiet, and I mean, it was all action from the beginning, and it took them a while, but they got the people into this. This turned into a pretty wild match towards the end, And they won that crowd over. They were very quiet early, and it just built and built, and these guys were just letting it all hang out. Lots of crazy moves and near falls here in this match. Kalisto came off the top rope right into a just giant knee to the face from Buddy Murphy. And Hideo was trying to set up for the GTS on Murphy. He escaped, and Murphy ended up hitting his finish on Itami and getting the pin. So Buddy Murphy retains the Cruiserweight Championship in what I thought was actually a pretty good match. Pay-per-view opened with Asuka defending the SmackDown Women's Championship against Becky Lynch. That should have been a dead giveaway right there, that this was not the last time we would see Becky here on the show. And they had a great match, I thought. Or a very good match. I don't want to say great. I think that word gets thrown around too much. But they had a very good match, I thought, these two. And in the end, and by the way, both women, but even Becky in particular, took some suplexes and slams, out of the ring onto the floor that were pretty brutal. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. But towards the end here, Asuka was able to lock her in the Asuka lock, and Becky had nowhere to go. Now, I thought, okay, maybe she'll, pass out in the hold. But nope, she tapped out. Becky Lynch taps out right in the middle of the ring, and Asuka retains her SmackDown Women's Championship. I don't think I would have had Becky tap out. They certainly would not have done that. If you had like a male babyface, and we've seen this before when there's a guy who gets hot and they're really pushing him, and I don't want to compare this to anyone in particular because then people will get on me and say, oh, you're comparing Becky Lynch to this guy or that guy. But I don't think we would have seen a similar situation like that where the guy taps out. So I'm not sure why this would have been any different. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter because she went on to win the Rumble. That's all that really counts. But I did think it was weird they just had her tap out instead of passing out in the hold. Now, the only thing I could think of here is they just did that finish, the finish where the person passes out in the submission hold and the choke, the night before at that TakeOver show in the match with Shayna Baszler and Bianca Belair. And Bianca Belair got out of the Kirifuda clutch the first time, and Shayna got the choke back on her, and she fought it until finally she just faded and she passed out. And so maybe they just didn't want to do the same finish twice on back-to-back shows, back-to-back nights with the women, which I can understand. But like I said, in the end, if they had just ended Becky's night like this, I would have been just beside myself because, thinking, what the hell are you doing with this woman if this really is all you had in mind for her? It's like Bryan back at the Royal Rumble in 2014. He had this great match to open the show, I think, with Bray Wyatt, and lost to Bray Wyatt, which is fine because most people, myself included, just assumed he'd be coming out as a surprise entry in the Rumble, only he never did. And boy, did that turn into a catastrophe that night. So in the end, Becky did come back out. It's all good. And you know what? They had Asuka look strong here, which they could have done if Becky had passed out also. But Asuka got the woman who was likely going to the WrestleMania main event, possibly to beat Ronda Rousey, to tap out. That could be a story they come back to down the road. And all you Asuka fans out there who maybe were a little concerned about, well, they're going to take the title right off of her, she just won it, you can rest easy because not only did she retain, but I thought they made her look real strong here in this match. We had Shane McMahon and The Miz challenging The Bar for the SmackDown Tag Team Championship. Early on in the match, Shane was making the save for The Miz. He came off the top rope out to the floor at one point with this just giant crossbody on the outside. And Shane was hitting all of his key spots. He hit the coast-to-coast. Cesaro, though, this was, I thought, the highlight of the match. Shane goes for the coast-to-coast at one point. And in mid-flight, Cesaro catches him in position for the giant swing. And this was the longest swing I've seen Cesaro do in a very long time. And Shane and probably Cesaro also, all disoriented at the end of it. But I lost count of how many revolutions he had here. It was probably around 20. I mean, this went on kind of like this pay-per-view. This went on and on and on. But in the end, it was The Miz nailing Sheamus with a skull-crushing finale. This was after a accidental brogue kick caught Cesaro from Sheamus. Sheamus gets laid out, and with Cesaro down, Shane goes up top. Nearly 50-year-old non-wrestler Shane McMahon goes up to the top rope and hits a shooting star press, a perfect shooting star press, and scores the win for his team. Shane and The Miz are the new tag team champions, which I thought was the right finish. If this thing is going where I think it's going, I talked all about this on the podcast when I talked about the predictions yesterday of where I think this is headed going into WrestleMania. There'll be a turn. It's going to probably be a singles match with Shane and Miz. But I thought the first thing to do, because there's still a lot of time between now and Mania, is you have them win the tag team titles before things start to go south. So I thought it was the right finish. And when the match was over, they exited the ring and they celebrated at ringside with George Mizanin, the Miz's dad. I guess Shane's dad was too busy to be there. But they took the tag belts and they put them on the Miz's, his father's shoulder. He held his arms up like he was a champion. He looked like the world's oldest Make-A-Wish kid. So we had Ronda Rousey up next, defending her Raw Women's Championship against the boss, Sasha Banks. I was looking forward maybe more to this match than any other on this show, because it's a match we've never seen before. It was one of the signature women's matches for Ronda, I think, when she first came into the company. You think about what are some of the biggest matches they could do with Ronda Rousey now that she's in WWE. What are the first names you think of? Charlotte, Asuka, maybe they would do a battle of the arm bars with them. And you thought of Sasha Banks. Now, Sasha Banks, for the better part of 2018, didn't do a whole lot of anything. She was not a featured performer. Her and Bayley both just were sort of on the back burner for most of the year. And it's probably pretty safe to say that Sasha has been very frustrated with how she's been used or not used in this company. This was one of the biggest matches of her main roster run. And they put this great video out that you may not have seen. I don't know why this didn't air on TV, but even though the pay-per-view's over, I would still say go back and watch it. It's great, nearly 10-minute video showing Sasha in training for the match. On her day off, she's at the Performance Center in the ring training with Drew Gulak and Oney Lorcan, learning new submission holds. They showed her going to the House of Glory school in Queens. House of Glory is the promotion run by the Amazing Red. And she has been there before in the past, before big pay-per-view matches. She'll just show up. She will show up and she'll train with Red and she'll get in there with the students. And this is not the first time she's done this before. And so it was just this great video package just showing how seriously she was taking this match going into it. I thought that one video was better promotion than any of this bullshit back and forth social media banter between them. That was a great piece to help promote this match. They went in there, having never worked a match before, a one-on-one, and I thought they had a great match. I thought this was better than the Asuka Becky match. I thought it was rough in some spots. You could see there was like a little miscommunication here and there. But overall, I thought that this was a very good match. One of the better matches on the show here between these two. Sasha got her in the crossface. Rousey got to the ropes. And Sasha put an armbar on the armbar queen herself. Rousey fought out of it. Now she's calling her finish, this twisting slam that she does. The name for it now is Piper's Pit. Obviously, she is paying homage to Rowdy Roddy Piper. She has his name. She has his kilt. And now she's naming her finishing move in memory of Hot Rod. Unfortunately, I don't think the move is all that great. If you're going to name a move after Rowdy Roddy Piper, I mean, come on. Certainly you can come up with something better than this. But she used her Piper's Pit finish and got the win. Again, I really enjoyed this match. There were a lot of, Sasha did some dives out of the ring. And sometimes when she does these things, I just cringe. And she's taking her life into her own hands. But I just really enjoyed this match. I thought that they had good chemistry together. Maybe not quite as good as Ronda and Charlotte. But I saw some people crapping on this match, and I just couldn't understand it. My first thought when this was over was, hey, what do you know? Another good Ronda Rousey match. How about that? I thought she was terrible. That's all I kept hearing. I thought she was bad because, she rehearses her matches in advance, or used to anyway. She doesn't know how to wrestle. I still do get a kick out of those comments. I don't see them as often. There aren't as many as there used to be. So I think people are finally coming around to the fact that Ronda Rousey is pretty damn good for somebody with her level of experience. And Sasha's no slouch herself. So like I said, there was definitely some awkwardness at some points during the match, but it got better as it went on. And by the end, they were working pretty damn well together. And I wouldn't even mind seeing them have a rematch at some point down the road. It was just nice to see Sasha in a meaningful match for a change. Not a six-man tag against the Riot Squad, or not the same matches over and over against Nia Jax. We got enough of her on this show. When the match was over, Sasha went to go leave. Ronda, they did meet up in the aisleway, and Ronda put her hand out, they shook hands, and then Sasha put the Four Horsemen sign up. And Ronda didn't like that very much, so they planted another little seed for what will be coming down the road. If it were up to me, I'd save it, assuming that Ronda doesn't take a break after WrestleMania, an extended break. I think you can wait and build it up for Survivor Series at the end of the year. SummerSlam or Survivor Series, but I think at some point down the road later this year, that 8-woman tag is going to be a big match that they can promote. Then we had the 30-woman Royal Rumble match. They did the right thing. They took the long way to get there. The very, very, very long way to get there. They could have shaved a good 10 to 12 minutes off this match just to tighten things up and cut some of the crap out of it. A lot of the early stuff I thought was pretty dull. It did get better. It did get more interesting the longer it went on. One thing that they did that I liked, and I could say this about both the men's and the women's, but I noticed it in the women's, is that they didn't rely on bringing back old names. Last year was the first ever Women's Royal Rumble. They wanted to load that thing up, and so they had Trish Stratus, and they had Lita, and they had Molly Holly, and they had, I think, Beth Phoenix, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe she wasn't in there, but they brought back names from the past to include in that match. They really didn't do much of that, if any of that, at all here in this match. Instead of relying on old names, bringing them back for nostalgia, instead what they did was they reserved a lot of spots in this match for NXT people, for the future, for people on the rise, people maybe that we haven't even seen much of yet. For example, Ziya Lee. Who the hell would have predicted Ziya Lee would be in the Women's Royal Rumble match? She made an appearance in the Mae Young Classic, which, if I remember when I reviewed that, I remember thinking Ziya Lee, and I think Karen Q maybe was the other one. I was pretty impressed by them. So it was cool to see her in there, but I certainly didn't expect that. Ziya Lee, Kairi Sane, Io Shirai, Candice LeRae. They had Casey Catanzaro in there. They had Ria Ripley in there, which I figured we were going to get either Ria Ripley or Toni Storm, and we got Ria. They were all in this match, and each one of them had a chance to shine. Now, Casey is very athletic. She's insanely athletic. And so she was doing some of the spots we saw her do in the Mae Young Classic, and she was wowing the crowd, and she did the one thing where she kind of was holding onto the ring post outside and scales the ring post. I mean, she can do some pretty impressive stuff. She's tiny as all hell. She's a very tiny person, but she's very athletic and very impressive to watch in there. So all of them had a chance to shine. I like that. I like that they did that here in this match. Lacey Evans was out at number 1, and Natalya was number 2. So those were the two people who opened the match. Some other highlights here. Nikki Cross. Nikki Cross got a nice pop coming out at number 8. Not bad for somebody who's barely even been on the main roster. Naomi. Naomi was given the Kofi Kingston spot here in this Royal Rumble match. She was eliminated, but not really. Then she was walking along the barricade, almost lost her balance a few times, but she was very slowly walking along the barricade, trying not to fall into the lava, I guess, on the ground. And she did this big leap from the barricade to the ring steps. And so she does this leap, right? Because she eliminated Mandy Rose. This is one of those little side stories that they were telling here in this Rumble. Mandy had come out earlier. Naomi comes out. First thing she does, makes a beeline for Mandy. Given that they've been feuding on television and Mandy's been trying to break up her marriage, which I think is a pretty good reason to go after her. And so she eliminates Mandy Rose. And now she's doing the whole thing where she's walking along the barricade and she jumps from the barricade to the steps without touching the floor, right? So she's not eliminated. Very impressive, and she gets a nice cheer for it. As soon as she jumps onto the steps. There's Mandy Rose, who hasn't left yet, and she just yanks Naomi's feet out from underneath her and eliminates her. That was fantastic. Mandy is great. All that effort for nothing. I love it. Charlotte entered the Women's Rumble at number 13, and I believe it was here that we got this insanely stupid comment from Corey Graves. Now, you guys know I have a soft spot for the 1992 Royal Rumble match. Corey Graves, in seeing Charlotte come out, mentioned the fact that her father, Ric Flair, had entered a Royal Rumble match, the Royal Rumble back in 92, that he entered that match all the way from the number 1 spot, and he went on to win the entire thing. And I just sat there thinking to myself, really? Because that must be a different Royal Rumble match I must have missed. Entered at number 1, you say? Of course, he entered at number 3, but either Corey had a forgetful moment there, or it wouldn't shock me if he was told to say that. That they were just like, just say it was number 1, to make it more impressive. Not that they care about history and that kind of stuff. But yes, Ric Flair did enter at number 3. The funny story about that, and I just talked about this on the podcast yesterday when I was talking about the 92 Rumble, in his book, Bobby Heenan mentions, or claims anyway, that it was his idea for Flair to go the distance in that Royal Rumble that year. He pitched the idea of him going the distance all the way from number 1 to the very end. And instead, what happened was Vince had him come out at number 3, in Bobby's view, so that Vince could take credit for it being his own idea. But had Bobby, if he's telling the truth here, had he gotten his way, Flair would have entered that Rumble at number 1. But no, he entered at number 3. So, yeah, somebody should let Corey Graves know. Zelina Vega. Zelina Vega came out doing the Vega entrance from Street Fighter, had the mask on and the little Wolverine claw. And she mixed it up briefly in this thing with Candice LeRae. Candice LeRae was one of those NXT names that was in this Royal Rumble match. And of course, they had a little feud going there for a while when Johnny Gargano was feuding with Andrade Cien Almas. In fact, I think at one point they had a mixed tag team match. And so they went at it a little bit. But most of her time in this Rumble was not spent in the ring. It was spent underneath the ring. She went under the ring, Zelina did, and kept peeking and poking her head out every now and then and laughing. And it all built to this spot where she poked her head out one more time. And then right next to her, who pokes his head out but Hornswoggle. And she sees this and she's terrified. And of course she runs out from underneath the ring, and Hornswoggle runs out and chases her into the ring. And this all leads to Zelina being dumped out of the ring. And Hornswoggle chased her all the way to the back. And somebody, I think Renee Young maybe on commentary, called it a nightmare scenario, or maybe it was Graves. And it really is. Imagine this little leprechaun guy is under the ring with you, and you can't shake him. He's just following you wherever you go. That's pretty scary. I actually liked it. I really liked that spot a lot. I thought that was fun. It didn't, overstay its welcome. They came out from underneath the ring. She got dumped out. Hornswoggle left, and that was it. Rhea Ripley came out at number 24. And she immediately started mixing it up with everybody, and it was cool to see her in there. She's going to be a big star down the road at some point. She's still very young. She can stay at NXT UK, or I would even transition her, honestly, at some point this year. I would just transition her over to NXT proper. Have her on the main NXT roster and let her, maybe work her way up to the championship there at some point. There's no need to rush her onto the main roster anytime soon. But she will definitely be a big player at some point down the road, as will Bianca Belair. They've got some pretty good female names in the pipeline, I think, in the next couple of years that they're going to be able to call up from NXT. Now, I had drawn number 25 in our Royal Rumble pool on the Facebook group. We do our annual Sound Off Royal Rumble pool in our private Facebook group. This was year 6. And we set a new record. We had over 2,500 people, 80 pools. It was crazy. So I drew number 25. And I was feeling pretty good about that number. I had drawn whatever number Randy Orton came out at in 2017. That was my number. I won that year, my pool. Obviously, I took myself out of the final pool. I wasn't going to send myself a t-shirt. But I drew number 25, and out comes Deonna Purrazzo. That was my number. And no, I did not put my hair up and square up. I did curse my television. But I still had one more chance left. One more chance left for number 25 in the Men's Rumble later in the show. Alexa Bliss was out at number 26. She got a huge reaction when her music hit. This was her first time in the ring since September. She had been dealing with the fallout from a concussion. Lana was out at number 28. Now, this was stupid the way they did this, I thought. This is one of those things where I'm happy that the right person won the Rumble, but the way they went about doing it was a bit suspect. So Lana hurt her ankle, right? I don't know if she rolled it, sprained it, whatever, on the pre-show. Now, I figured what they would do is they would just make an announcement that Lana was injured. She was not going to be able to compete and participate in the Rumble. Leave it very ambiguous about what would happen with her spot. And then Becky would come out, her music would hit as a big surprise, and she would come out. Instead, they let Lana come out with her ankle all wrapped up. She could barely move. She could barely walk. She could barely stand on her leg. Now, logically, what sense does that make? Why would WWE doctors allow this? Why would they allow her to even walk out there? It was insanely stupid, I thought. So she is in the aisleway. She just can't walk anymore. Now there's referees around her, and they're trying to find out, are you okay? And so while all of this is going on, more people are coming out for the Rumble. Nia Jax came out. She beat up Lana on her way to the ring, stomped on her ankle. Carmella came out at number 30, which we knew. She won the Mixed Match Challenge, and so she earned the right to be number 30. All of a sudden, as the officials are tending to Lana in the aisleway, Becky Lynch just casually strolls out. And she walks up to Fit Finlay, who's out there, and she's just trying to plead her case to Fit, and say, look, Lana can't go. Let me go in. Let me take her spot and be in the Rumble. Now, the people reacted great to this. They saw this, and they're cheering, and they're chanting Becky's name. And I'm watching this going, boy, I didn't realize that Fit Finlay had gained booking power here in this company. This is a great comeback story. If you remember, he got fired a few years ago because he was the agent in charge on, I don't know if it was Madison Square Garden or not, but there was a live event where I think The Miz interrupted the national anthem or something, and they had people from the U.S. Army there in attendance who were offended, because everybody gets offended about everything these days. And so they were offended, and poor Fit Finlay was caught in the crossfire because he approved that. That's why they fired him. So eventually they rehired him, and apparently now he has gained booking powers in the company because he let Becky Lynch go ahead and take Lana's spot in the Royal Rumble, and everybody cheered and went crazy. And so the final four of this Women's Rumble, it came down to Bayley, Becky, Nia, and Charlotte, which is a pretty solid final four. Charlotte eliminated Becky. So now we're down to Charlotte, Becky, and Nia. And I'm not a huge Nia Jax fan, but you knew that Nia was going to be in there at the end. She had to be. She had to be. Originally, when I was first talking about Becky winning the Rumble, I was kind of pitching the idea of it coming down to just her and Nia, and having her be the one to dump Nia out of the ring and win the whole thing. So Nia kind of had to be there anyway. Nia's out on the apron. Becky had been not eliminated, but she had been dumped out of the ring. And so as Nia is getting up and standing up on the apron, Becky reaches up, yanks her down onto the floor for the elimination. And so it comes down to Charlotte and Becky Lynch. And I thought that this was very smart for them to do this, because, and they did this in both Rumbles, by the way, this year. Sometimes people complain about, well, it's so predictable because you know who's going to win, but then you look at the final 2 or 3, and these other 2 have no chance, and why do they do this? Well, they did the opposite this year. In both the women's and the men's Rumbles, it came down to probably the 2 most likely winners of the match. So it could have gone either way. It could have been Charlotte. They could have pulled a 94 Rumble and did the split decision. You really didn't know for sure. I mean, I pretty much figured it was going to be Becky, but you didn't know for sure. There was still doubt about how this was going to go down. And so Becky is getting back into the ring, and Nia comes over and knocks her off the ring steps, and Lynch is down and holding her knee. She's selling a knee injury. And she can't even put weight on the knee. She can't stand up. It looks like they're going to just call the match off and award the match to Charlotte. And Becky, of course, says, no. And she climbs into the ring. She can barely stand. I thought that all of this was unnecessary. I know what they were trying to do here. They really wanted her to just, the fighting underdog here. And that's fine. But I just thought this was one of those things where they just took the really long way of getting there. It would have been very simple to just have her come out in Lana's spot as a total surprise and just have it come down to her and Nia or her and Charlotte, and they go at it tooth and nail, and then she just dumps her out and wins. They went with this injury angle and dragged it out and dragged it out and dragged it out. And in the end, it was Becky Lynch, not pulling down the top rope, but when Charlotte made a charge at her, she basically propelled her up over the top rope onto the apron, nailed her with a really, I don't know if it was a clothesline or a fist, but she just clobbered Charlotte, and Charlotte fell down on the apron, and then very slowly just rolled down onto the floor. And so Becky Lynch wins the Women's Royal Rumble match. 72 minutes this match went. 72 minutes. That's got to be one of the longest Rumble matches that they've ever done. Men's or women's. I don't know. I would love to know offhand what the record is. I want to say the record is probably 75 or 77 minutes. It might be the 2002. I remember that 2002 Rumble that Triple H won was very long. So I don't know if that holds the record or if there's been a longer one since then. But this has got to be up there as one of the longest Rumbles they've ever done. And it was way too long. I thought it was a good Rumble. It had the right winner. They got it right. Like I said, they kind of took the long way of getting there. I compare it to like your car GPS, right? You use your GPS sometimes. It wants to send you the long way. You're like, no, I want to take the expressway. It's like, no, take the streets. At the end of the day, you're getting to the same destination. So it doesn't matter. But they did take the long way in getting there. And so now I can't wait for Becky Lynch to go ahead and choose Asuka to try to get back her SmackDown Women's Championship at WrestleMania. And that way Vince can laugh at all of us. By this point, it was almost 10 p.m. Eastern. So now we have 2 championship matches left and another Royal Rumble match. So we already know the show is running way long. And I mention this because I know some people are going to be like, all right, we get the point. The show is long. Well, I mention this because up next was Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles for the WWE Championship. And I have to mention that again because the length of this show had a direct impact on this match. Now, I said when I was doing the preview and the predictions for this pay-per-view, I said, here's 2 guys you can always rely upon. It would be impossible for these 2 to go in there and have anything but an excellent match. Well, about that. Pains me to say it. I do enjoy their work together. I've yet to see up until this point a bad match between the 2 of them. The work itself was solid. The match bored me to tears. And yes, it suffered from a lack of crowd reaction. I'm not just saying because of the crowd reaction it was a bad match. The crowd reaction did not help because nobody cared about this. Coming off that Rumble win, 72-minute Rumble, Becky Lynch, people wanted to see, dying to see this woman win. They got their payoff. I'm kind of surprised they didn't end the show with this, to be honest. They did it in the middle of the show. So these 2 guys were in effect in a death spot here on the show. You put this in another position, maybe they have a better match. Maybe the people are more into it. They're more excited about it. But they did not care at all. And the match suffered because of it. But it was just hard to keep an interest in this match. AJ had Bryan's leg. Bryan went for an enziguri, ducked, and the referee got bumped. So there's a ref bump here in this match. Now this is what made the match even worse. The show's already going long. People are tired. People are not reacting. These guys are in there. They're working. They're killing each other. But nobody's reacting to any of this. And it was a long match. The match went over 20 minutes. So that's all bad enough. Then you get to the finish. They do the ref bump. AJ hits a Styles clash. So he's got the visual pin. Right? They did this with Bianca Belair and Shayna Baszler the night before. She had the visual pin on Shayna. Here, AJ had the visual pin. So you knew he was getting screwed over somehow. All of a sudden, you talk about random. This was about as random as Papa Shango coming out at the end of WrestleMania 8. Out walks Eric Rowan, who's been out for months with an injury. How many times he's been out with an injury, I've lost count. They must see something in this guy because he's been around for a while and they keep trying with him. So they obviously see something in this guy. He walks out. He's wearing like a flannel shirt over a t-shirt. And he ends up going after AJ Styles and taking down AJ. Bryan covers AJ. Referee comes over, counts the 3. That's how the match ends. After all that, it ends with Eric Rowan interfering and attacking AJ Styles and handing Daniel Bryan the win. When the match is over, Bryan has Rowan hold up AJ, and Bryan gives him the running knee and lays him out, and the two of them walk out together. Now, having said all of that about the match and how I didn't enjoy it and I was very disappointed, the most disappointing thing in the entire show was this match. Having said all of that, I like the idea of Bryan having a heavy in his corner. It's the idea that, if you remember, I talked about Lars Sullivan. I wanted Lars Sullivan in this spot. This was when they first started running vignettes for him and they were keeping it vague about where he was going to go. I said, you know what? I really think the best place for Sullivan is SmackDown and not Monday Night Raw, because Monday Night Raw just feels like the land of the giants. Brock Lesnar, Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, Braun Strowman. Lars is a big guy, but he's not overly tall. So the idea that you're going to, let's say, have Lars Sullivan side by side or in the same ring with those guys, they're going to, he's going to look small by comparison. I think you want him to be in a position to stand out as being a monster and not sort of dwarfed by all these other ones. And I thought SmackDown would be the better place for him. And I said, well, it could be interesting if at TLC he debuts as Bryan's heavy and helps him win the match over AJ. And they didn't do it. Instead, they have these plans, and might still have these plans, for Lars to have a WrestleMania match with John Cena, only now he's having issues and that might not happen. I look at this and I say, I stick with that idea. I think it would have made a lot more sense, instead of putting him right in a WrestleMania match with John Cena that may not even happen now, to have him as the heavy for Bryan. That's a hell of a spot for him to debut at, right? Being the bodyguard, basically, for the WWE Champion on SmackDown. Now, we'll see where they go with this. This may well just be the first piece of the puzzle here, because people were asking me, what about Luke Harper? What does this mean for the future of Luke Harper? As far as I know, I don't believe Luke Harper has been medically cleared yet, because when Rowan went down with his injury, Harper had an injury of his own that he just went and said, okay, I'm going to take care of it. I don't know that he's been cleared to come back yet, so it's possible that now Rowan is ready and Harper is not. And they felt like, we have to do something with Rowan, let's just plug him in with Daniel Bryan. It's possible that that's what they're doing here. It's also possible that Harper, when he is ready, could join them. Bryan may end up getting his own little Wyatt family. And if that's the case, it makes me think, you got Gallows and Anderson on SmackDown, who aren't really doing a whole hell of a lot right now. And they have had an alliance in the past with AJ Styles. If they want to keep this thing going with Bryan and AJ, well, there you go. There's a 6-man tag you could do at the Elimination Chamber right there. I don't know that it'll, carry over to WrestleMania. I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of over the whole AJ Bryan thing. I would rather they just move on to something else. But if they want to milk this for another month, let AJ link back up with Anderson and Gallows, get his own crew, and do a 6-man tag at Elimination Chamber, not unlike the one they did at Elimination Chamber 5 years ago, I think it was, between the Wyatts and the Shield. I don't know that this one would be as good, but why not? I think it's an idea worth exploring. So I'm keeping an open mind about this as far as going with Rowan, because it may just be the first piece of a larger puzzle here. But yeah, I saw this and I said, man, I really wish they would have gone with Lars in this situation. But I love the idea of Bryan having a heavy in his corner, and it works. He's a heel. And it's just, I don't know, it just makes sense for me to have the small heel, just to piss people off, have somebody much bigger than him basically doing his dirty work and backing him up. Because Bryan's got a big mouth. He's been going around all week talking about the Royal Rumble burger and people eating themselves to death and all this other stuff. And he's been very entertaining, but he's got that personality where you just want to punch him in the mouth. Now he's got somebody to back him up. He can talk shit and basically just kind of pull Eric Rowan in front of him and say, hey, you got to deal with him now. So I like that. The match itself, big disappointment. Brock Lesnar, on the other hand, and Finn Balor had the opposite kind of match here on this show for the Universal Championship. This was not a long match, but I thought this was an excellent match, which should come as no surprise. This is Brock Lesnar's MO. He just works very well with guys that are smaller than him. He did it with CM Punk. He did it with Daniel Bryan. He did it with AJ Styles. And he did it again here with Finn Balor. There's a pattern. In case you didn't notice here, there is a pattern that has developed of Brock Lesnar working with these smaller guys. And to his credit, for all the crap that people talk and everybody and myself talks about Brock Lesnar sometimes, he sells his ass off for these guys. And they try to do it in a believable way. Some people just aren't going to give it a chance. I can't take this seriously, Finn's too small. But they try at least to, like in this case, during this match, Balor shoved Brock into the side, the edge of the announce table. So the point of the edge of the desk went right into Brock's abdomen. I don't remember if any of the announcers mentioned the fact that he had diverticulitis in the past. I might have just thrown that in there too. But he got rammed abdomen first right into the side of that table a couple of different times, and so he was selling it like he was really hurt. They at least try to work things like that in there. It's not like Balor is standing with him, and just putting his fists up and beating up Brock Lesnar here. But that was how Brock was sort of taken off his game here in this match. There was a spot where Brock went for an F5. So again, just to go to the point about Brock selling. He's suplexing Balor around. He goes for a German suplex. He can't do it. Holds his midsection. He's too hurt. So instead, he goes to give Balor an F5, and on the way down, Balor turns it into a DDT. Gets a near fall. That was a good near fall, but what came next was a great near fall. So Brock ends up outside the ring, and Balor does a dive out over the top, lands right on top of Brock. Immediately gets back into the ring, hits the ropes again, hits a second dive, connects with Brock. People say one more time. He says, okay, gets back into the ring, hits a third flip dive out over the top rope, and connects and nails Brock Lesnar. Michael Cole, I thought, actually did a hell of a job here on commentary. Renee Young immediately ruined it by saying Balor's going to win the championship. We're going to have a new champion, which automatically meant we are not going to have a new champion. And so that sucked. And, look, I blame Renee. We all know who probably fed that line to her. It's not all her fault. But boy, did that just ruin the moment. I fucking hate when they do that. But before that, Cole was going nuts. He was hyping this up. They get Brock back in the ring. Balor hits a shotgun drop kick in the corner. Heads up top. Hits the double foot stomp off the top. Gets a great near fall. Even better than the DDT off the F5. Great near fall that people bought into. Brock immediately turns it into a Kimura lock. We haven't seen him bust that move out in a while, let alone win with it. But he puts Balor in the Kimura, and at that point, there was nowhere for him to go. He fought, and he fought, and he fought, until finally he had no choice but to tap out. And so he gave up. And Brock Lesnar wins. Brock Lesnar retains the Universal Championship. And it just felt to me like this ain't over between these two. And the finish, by the way, I have no problem with. I thought the finish was fine. Even the almighty Triple H himself, right, at SummerSlam one year, once tapped out to the Kimura lock. But the way they left this, it just felt to me like there is a lot of unresolved stuff between these two. I frankly don't see how they don't promote a Beast versus Demon match between these, either at WrestleMania or on some other show, maybe Fastlane if they want to blow it off before WrestleMania, if they want to stick with their plan of Seth Rollins against Brock Lesnar, which is fine. I think that would be a fine match. They might want to blow off the Balor thing before then. I think it would be completely stupid to have him put the paint on fucking Fastlane. I mean, come on. That's the sort of thing that should be saved for a Royal Rumble or a WrestleMania. That's his gimmick. You should save it for a big show. And if they are going to go down that road, I think WrestleMania would be the place to do it. But Brock was all pissed at, Balor when the match was over. He gave him 3 more German suplexes, gave him an F5. I mean, he left this guy laying. He beat the piss out of him when this match was over. And that just made me think even more that we're going to get a rematch between these two at some point. And that has to be, Demon Balor against Brock. And I could see that as the championship match of WrestleMania. I'll talk more about this later in the review when I talk about the Men's Rumble. But I love this. I thought this was great. I actually went back again before I started recording just to rewatch it because it was such a short match. And I liked it even more the second. There were a couple things I actually picked up on that I missed the first time. Probably because I was typing notes or whatever. But I really enjoyed this match. I thought this was a much better match than we would have gotten had they actually gone with Lesnar and Braun Strowman. I don't think that point can even be debated. I don't care if you're one of these people, oh, he's too small. You cannot convince me that that match would have been better than this match. This was great. And finally, it was time for the 30-man over-the-top rope men's Royal Rumble match. By this point in the show, all I could think of was this Titanic meme that you see online with the old woman. It's been 84 years. That's what it felt like. It opened with Elias in concert, which is exactly what we needed at 11 o'clock at night. And he's about to sing a song when all of a sudden we hear Jeff Jarrett's music. Not his Attitude Era, Don't Piss Me Off music, but the old school Double J Jeff Jarrett music. He comes out with the light up Double J hat in his old gear. He does the strut. And so we get some banter between the two of them. He should have tried to sell him some of that Global Force gold, but he didn't do that. And they were about to sing together when Elias took the guitar. He broke it over Jarrett's back, dumped him out of the ring. It was fine. I thought it was a nice little cameo. They really had no big surprises in the Rumble match, other than with their own talent, like what they did with Nia and stuff like that. There was no big surprise name. The biggest surprise name, I guess, unless you count the NXT people that were in it, was Jeff Jarrett. So if you were waiting for and hoping for a big surprise in the Royal Rumble this year, you were probably left very disappointed. So we had last year's winner, Nakamura. He was out at number 3. We had Kurt Angle in the Royal Rumble, out at number 4. This was a complete waste. Now, I get Kurt is older. He's slower. He's not the Kurt Angle he once was. But if you're going to have Kurt Angle in the Royal Rumble, I'm not sure why you would have him out at number 4 and have him very quickly eliminated by Nakamura. Kurt hit a few quick angle slams and such, but he didn't do a whole lot of nothing here in this match. I was just completely bewildered by this. That they couldn't come up with something more for him to do in this match. Big E was out there at number 5. Johnny Gargano was the first of the NXT names, the many NXT names we saw. He was in there at number 6, so it was cool that he and his wife both were able to make their Royal Rumble debuts on this show. So the night after he wins the North American Championship, Gargano's in there. He was in there for a while. I didn't note the match time for him, but it felt like he had a good amount of time spent in that ring. Jinder Mahal was out at number 7, immediately eliminated by Johnny Gargano. As if I didn't like Gargano enough. There's even more reason to like the guy. Samoa Joe was out at number 8 in what was his very first Royal Rumble appearance. If you remember last year, they were teasing that he was going to go after John Cena in the Royal Rumble. And I think it was about a week before the show, he suffered a complete freak foot injury. It was like a heel injury. He was in a match, I think, on TV with Titus O'Neil, planted his foot wrong. And I don't remember exactly what the injury was, but it was just a complete freak thing. And he missed WrestleMania. I think he might have been back the night after, but he had to miss WrestleMania. So this guy just had no, it was like if he didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. So hopefully he'll actually make it onto the WrestleMania card this year. If he does, I think it'll be his first, but this was his first Rumble. Curt Hawkins was out at number 9, and almost immediately he ended up underneath the ring. And I thought to myself, boy, nice to see them try some innovative spots that we haven't seen before here on this same show. Seth Rollins was out at number 10, so if you had number 10 in the Rumble pool, congratulations. Titus O'Neil was out at number 11. He slowed down when he got down to the ring, so to make sure that we didn't have a repeat of what we saw at the greatest Royal Rumble last year in Saudi Arabia. And got a huge pop for it. He should have just turned around and walked to the back. That should have been it for him. He got a huge ovation. He should have been like, I'm going to end on a high note. I'll see you people later. But no, he he also went underneath the ring. He chased Curt Hawkins out from underneath the ring, and I think Hawkins ended up eliminating him. Kofi Kingston was out at number 12. And Mustafa Ali was out at number 13. I had high hopes for him going the distance. Not winning, but going the distance here in this match, which he did. Dean Ambrose was out at number 14. Boy, does he just feel like the most unimportant person in the world right now. What the hell has happened to Dean Ambrose? I had high hopes for this guy's heel turn. I couldn't wait for them to pull the trigger on a heel turn. And this has been one of the most disappointing stories, I think, in the entire company in the last few months, is that this heel turn has gone over like a wet fart. I do look forward, though, to them doing nothing with Dean Ambrose for a while, and then when his contract comes due, all of a sudden, we'll see Dean Ambrose get this big push. That seems to be the pattern recently with some of their talents. They don't do anything with them until there's talk that they either want their release or their contract might be coming up, and all of a sudden, they get more television time, or they get a nice little push for themselves. I can't imagine why that is. It is funny, though. Overnight, I don't know how many of you saw the tweet that Chris Jericho put out. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. And he put a tweet out, and he tagged WWE, Ring of Honor, and Impact. And he said, "I love watching you push all of your randoms, but just know that we are interested in maybe 6 to 8 of your talents total. We don't need you." And then he tagged All Elite Wrestling. So it is funny. Look, people have been denying that, All Elite, that there's no All Elite effect. What are you talking about? They haven't run a show yet, which is true. There are people who I think are getting a little ahead of themselves because All Elite Wrestling has not run a single show yet. They don't even have a full roster. But if you don't think that there is some sort of All Elite effect going on here in terms of WWE, for example, suddenly, pushing certain people on television or featuring people we haven't seen in ages, you're out of your mind. And if we do see AJ, by the way, teaming up with Anderson and Gallows soon on SmackDown TV to take on Bryan and Rowan, or maybe Harper if he comes back, don't think that doesn't have anything to do with it either, although their contracts aren't up until the fall. But yeah, there is an All Elite effect going on here, and it's just funny that Jericho picked up on the same thing. No Way Jose is number 15. I imagine he is not one of those 6 to 8 people that Jericho said All Elite is interested in. He came out doing the whole conga line, got in, and was immediately dumped out and conged his way all the way to the back. Drew McIntyre was out at number 16. I know he was a favorite of some people. And he had a pretty dominant performance. I think he had a pretty good showing for himself in this match. I never really realistically thought he had a shot. Xavier Woods was out at number 17. Now, let me just say that the New Day, to me, is a great success story in WWE. If you think back to when the group was first put together, people didn't give it a chance, and here we are now. They've been together, 4, 5 years maybe now at this point? They've made that company and themselves, I'm sure, a lot of money. They've sold a lot of merch, and so they're a great success story in WWE. But at some point, everybody starts to wear out their welcome. And I kind of get that feeling with New Day, especially when it comes to this Rumble stuff. Now, it's become an annual thing that how's Kofi Kingston going to get eliminated, but not really? What's the save spot going to be for Kofi Kingston this year? To the point where I almost don't even think it matters anymore, right? It was kind of cute the first couple of years, and as is the case with WWE, they tend to run things into the ground. And that was kind of the point that I reached this year with the Kofi save spot. Because now they're getting very convoluted with it. It just seems, it's so forced. It's just not as enjoyable. It really is just not as enjoyable. It didn't really get a huge reaction like it has in the past. So they tried something similar where Xavier caught him, not in a wheelbarrow, but he kind of caught Kofi, and Kofi was like sitting on Xavier, and Xavier was slowly, walking to the ring to make sure he didn't drop him. And as soon as they got into the ring, they were immediately eliminated. I think by Drew. I think Drew clotheslined both of them out of the ring. Pete Dunne, the Bruiserweight, the NXT UK champion, or I guess WWE UK champion. He wrestles on NXT UK. He was out next at number 18. It's pretty cool. He posted a tweet after the show saying, he remembers performing in some kind of a field or something in front of 2 people. And here he was performing in front of almost 50,000 people last night. So that was a cool feeling for him, I'm sure. Andrade Cien Almas was out at number 19. He was the NXT champion when he entered the Royal Rumble last year. He went 30 minutes in that match. And I don't think he went quite 30 minutes this time, but he had another good showing here. He was right down to the wire. I think he ended up being one of the final 4 or 5 here in this match. Apollo Crews was out at number 20. Number 21, speaking of NXT, was the former NXT champion Aleister Black, who fell to Tommaso Ciampa the night before at that TakeOver show. I wouldn't be shocked if they called Black up to the main roster very soon on a permanent basis. But he eliminated Dean Ambrose with the Black Mass kick, knocked him right off the apron. Shelton Benjamin, who I forgot was even employed, was number 22. Isn't that the famous story where Vince McMahon forgot that he thought he still employed Shelton Benjamin? It was some kind of a talent meeting in the back. One of the wrestlers tells this story. It might have been Curt Hawkins. Curt Hawkins, I think, on a podcast once told this story. There was some kind of all-talent meeting in the back, and Vince was talking and giving a speech and asking for questions, and I don't remember who it was. It was obviously another black wrestler, I guess. I don't know exactly who it was, but they kind of raised their hand to ask a question. And maybe it was Tarver. Maybe it was Michael Tarver. But Vince listened to the question and then made some kind of like, that's a damn good question, Shelton. Even though Shelton Benjamin was no longer employed by the company. I always think back to that story. So anyway, here comes Shelton Benjamin out at number 22. Mustafa Ali, around this time, eliminated Samoa Joe, which I thought was great. He eliminated Samoa Joe. He got revenge. Joe has been torturing him on television the last few weeks. So not only did Ali spend a lot of time in this match, he got a big elimination as well. I wouldn't quite put this on the same level as Maven eliminating The Undertaker, but this was sort of his Maven moment here in this Rumble. Baron Corbin was out at number 23. A dark cloud was hovering over the stadium at this point. Jeff Hardy was out at number 24. We had Baron fucking Corbin eliminating Aleister Black. Of all the people to eliminate Aleister Black in this match, it had to be Baron fucking Corbin. Drew McIntyre eliminated Pete Dunne. We had Rey Mysterio out at number 25. And there goes my chances, I thought, at that point for winning my Royal Rumble pool. So much for that. Bobby Lashley was out at number 26. He was immediately eliminated by Seth Rollins. And this was kind of weird because when he was first eliminated, I thought he hurt his hand. I thought he suffered some kind of, like he broke his wrist. I don't know, just the way it kind of went down, he immediately grabbed his hand. I thought, oh shit, something happened. But he's fine. What they did here, they did this whole angle where he snapped. He just lost it. And he pulled Rollins out of the ring, and he was slamming him. He slammed him through the English announce desk and just completely laid him out. He laid waste to Seth Rollins. And Rollins was taking a nap out there for a while. Braun Strowman was out at number 27. He was the replacement for the injured John Cena in storyline. Cena suffered an ankle injury at the hands of Drew McIntyre. Dolph Ziggler was out at number 28. This after giving an interview to Chris Van Vliet on his YouTube channel and saying to him that he would not be in Phoenix for the Royal Rumble and that he, in fact, was on a little bit of a hiatus from WWE as he went on tour with his comedy stuff and did other things. And sure enough, number 28, out comes Dolph Ziggler. And so, I guess the point of all this is never believe anything a wrestler has to say, especially if it's a few days before the Royal Rumble. That's why a lot of people thought Finn Balor was going to come out in the demon paint, even though he told ESPN he wasn't. We are conditioned to automatically assume that if we are told one thing as wrestling fans, the opposite must be true. Just like Renee Young earlier. Finn Balor, he's going to win the championship. No, he's not. So that's just how we've been conditioned. We're like abuse victims here. We have no trust. Randy Orton came out at number 29. And R-Truth, who won the Mixed Match Challenge, was out at number 30. He started rapping, just like he rapped Jack Swagger to the cage for his first MMA fight the night before. And R-Truth was attacked by Nia Jax. I think we all knew that R-Truth getting in the ring was probably not going to happen. Somebody was going to take his spot or steal his spot or attack him in the back. And it was Nia Jax. Now think about this. When all of us were thinking of different ideas and coming up with all these different ideas about how can they get out of R-Truth being number 30 in the Royal Rumble, who could take his spot, what creative idea could they possibly come up with, I don't think that anybody would have thought that it would be Nia Jax attacking him and stealing his spot. Points for innovation, I guess. But boy, did that suck. Boy, was that was something else. That was something else. I didn't want to see Nia Jax in the first Rumble, other than just to get eliminated by Becky. The last thing we needed was to see Nia Jax in multiple Royal Rumble matches. She's the last person who deserved to be in multiple Royal Rumble matches. So she gets in there, and she eliminates Mustafa Ali. Now, I'm going to put aside my anger over that and say that I, going into this Rumble, said that I was hoping Ali would get the Iron Man spot in this Rumble. And he ended up with the second longest time in the ring this year, second only to the winner, Seth Rollins, who was in there for 43 minutes. Ali was in there for an even 30 minutes, the same time that Almas had in the Rumble last year. I was very happy to see that. Between that and the elimination of Samoa Joe, I thought Mustafa Ali was protected and was just, in a position to be made to look really good in the Rumble this year, and he deserves it. He's a hell of a talent. I am very happy to see him getting first being on the main roster, number one, and number two, getting any kind of a push like this. I can only hope that he's in some kind of a feature match at WrestleMania, maybe for the United States Championship. Maybe by putting the belt back on Nakamura, maybe they'll do something with Nakamura and Mustafa Ali instead of what I had hoped, which was that Cien Almas would take the title from Rusev and they could do a champion, like a mask versus title match between Almas and Rey Mysterio to blow off their little feud at WrestleMania. I'd be okay with Nakamura and Mustafa Ali for the U.S. title. So that I thought was actually one of the high points of the match. But yes, he was dumped out by Nia Jax. Now, Nia nearly eliminated Rey Mysterio. She got him up on her shoulders. There was a moment here after she eliminated Ali, where Randy Orton was getting ready. He was right behind her. He was in prime position for an RKO. Nia turned around and caught him, and they locked eyes, and there was a stare down. And the fans bought into this. I will say, while I think it was incredibly stupid to put Nia Jax in this match, and she, of all people, was the last person I wanted to see here. I wanted to vomit when I saw her walk out here for this match. The fans were buying into this because they wanted to see Randy Orton lay her out. And he went for the RKO. She shoved him off. And so I figured, all right, well, of course they're not going to do that because they have this policy now. They don't do man-on-woman violence, blatant man-on-woman violence in WWE. They haven't done that for a number of years. I mean, Lana got knocked off the apron by her husband earlier on the kickoff show, but that's different. But one of the reasons why I thought it was stupid her even being in this match in the first place is because they no longer typically allow the men to do anything against the women, even in retaliation. So I just thought it was idiotic. So she gets Rey up on her shoulders and goes to eliminate him. Turns around and Dolph Ziggler gives her a super kick right to the face. And I'm like, well, that was interesting. And they follow that up by Rey Mysterio hitting her with a 619 into an RKO by Randy Orton. Randy Orton lays her out with the RKO, and this gets a huge pop. Got a huge pop from me, too. I will say that of all the ways to have used her, given that they did put her in this match, I did enjoy the fact that she was able to get her comeuppance. I mean, she came in, she's beating people up, she's throwing people out. Look, you're in the Men's Royal Rumble match. Once you're in the ring, all bets are off. I thought it would have been stupid for them to have people pussyfooting around not wanting to put a hand on her. You're in the Royal Rumble match. This is what you would expect. You're going to get your ass kicked. And I was waiting because you knew it was going to come. You just knew that it was going to come, and it did not take very long. Now, I don't know. I've heard this guy's name before. I know of him. I don't know him. I wouldn't know him from a hole in the wall if I saw him on the street, but there were people retweeting a tweet from this guy, Lou DiBella. Lou DiBella is a famous boxing promoter. He tweeted, "Hey, at WWE, Okay, you're sports entertainment, but with the legion of kids watching and way too much domestic violence, having a woman enter a man's Royal Rumble and get pummeled by the men is bad messaging, out of line, and was a really bad idea. Shaking my head. Now, he and I can agree that it was stupid to even put her in the match in the first place, but the whole thing with her, getting hit with all the finishing moves, I had no problem with it. You're going to hear a lot of people probably complaining about this, and I just hope it's not one of these things where WWE has to put some kind of a statement out, or TMZ makes a big deal about it. Give me a fucking break. You know what I mean? Like, it was not a big deal. I had with them doing what they did there at the end to get her out of there. I had no problem with that at all. What would they want? What do you want? She's going to eliminate herself? I mean, they put themselves in that position by even having her in the match in the first place. But you're going to have people who are going to raise a stink about what they did here. I don't have a problem with it at all. I don't have a problem with it. And it's just one of those things where, you're going to have the usual suspects complaining about it. And it's just, get over yourself. So it came down to a final four. By the way, we had Almas. How could I forget? Almas eliminated Randy Orton, which was a pretty big deal. So Orton had his moment, giving her the RKO. But shortly thereafter, it was Almas dumping Orton out of the ring. And so for him, that was a big moment. Came down to a final four of Dolph Ziggler, Andrade Cien Almas, Seth Rollins, and Braun Strowman. So Andrade is there at the end. Pretty good. Rollins and Strowman were the final two, which you knew it would be. You knew that Ziggler wasn't going to be in the final two. So Andrade was dumped, and then Ziggler was dumped, and it came down to Rollins and Strowman. And like the Women's Rumble, right? I like the fact they at least kept it somewhat interesting there at the end, because it was entirely possible that they could have had Braun Strowman win, and it would have been a horrendous mistake. He wasn't even as over as Rollins was in this match. But it would have been a terrible mistake, I think, for Braun Strowman to win this match. But it was possible, right? The way they left things open with him and Brock. They clearly want to do that match again at some point. Thankfully, that's not what happened here, though. They ended up on the apron. I thought they were going to do the Benoit finish from 2004. Thankfully, they didn't, but they ended up on the apron. He got Strowman after posting him. And kicking him in the head, he got him on his knees, gave him a curb stomp on the apron, and Braun fell to the floor. And so Seth Rollins is the winner of the 2019 Royal Rumble match, which I think clocked in at just under an hour. I want to say about 57 or 58 minutes, which is about the length of time you would hope and expect a Royal Rumble match to be. Again, I think the women's went way too long. I think the women's, you could have shaved 10 to 12 minutes off of it. And it would have really helped a lot here on this pay-per-view. They went off the air. It was almost midnight. No big pyro celebration because they just don't do pyro anymore. This company made $1 billion TV deal and they can't afford pyro. But maybe because the roof was closed, maybe. I don't know. But there was no WrestleMania sign. Instead, they put it on the Jumbotron. So everybody pointed to the Jumbotron. And that's how they went off the air. I thought that it was overall a good Rumble, but the Women's Rumble was a little bit better. If I had to compare the two of them. And now, Seth Rollins gets to choose which champion he goes after at WrestleMania. And the obvious choice would be Brock Lesnar. It seems like they've been dropping hints and planting seeds, and he's been making little comments and digs at Brock now for a number of months. And I think Rollins would be a fine choice to go and beat the Beast at WrestleMania. But I was thinking about this. I pose this question to all of you, because I want to get your feedback, how you feel about this. And look, I know that Balor came into the show as the challenger, not the champion, so he is not entitled to anything, because he lost by submission, fair and square on the show. But how would you feel if WWE threw us a bit of a curveball, and instead Seth Rollins challenged Daniel Bryan for the WWE title at WrestleMania, and they did a rematch for the Universal title between Balor and Lesnar, with Balor as the Demon in the Demon paint, and they promoted it as the Demon against the Beast? How would you feel if those were the two championship matches at WrestleMania? Would you be okay with that, or would you not like to see that? Because me personally, I'm fine with either way. Rollins and Lesnar is fine, and I actually would be okay if they wanted to do Demon Balor against Brock and give us Rollins and Bryan, which I think would be a first-time ever match. I would be okay with either one of those scenarios, so long as we don't get Brock and Strowman for the championship. I am so over that. I am so done with that. I do not want to see that at WrestleMania. no matter what. That's one match I do not want to see. But this other scenario that I was kind of thinking of, I said, well, what if they go this way? Well, it's kind of interesting, but let me put the question to all of you. And I have a feeling the opinion is going to be very divided on this. I put the question on Twitter, and I would say the vast majority of the people were very positive to the idea. But, you know, you're going to have people who don't want to see the match again, who think Balor is too small, enough, no more. So let me know what you guys think. We'll know very quickly. In fact, tonight on Raw, we may not have to wait very long to find out who Rollins chooses for WrestleMania. But the other thing also, if you do it that way, if you have Rollins choose Bryan instead of Brock, because we already know Becky is going to choose Ronda. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. If you do it the other way, at least then you don't have both Rumble winners both challenging for Raw titles, kind of leaving SmackDown out in the cold. Although after the way Raw swept SmackDown at the Survivor Series, I think we all know how this company really thinks, what they really think of SmackDown anyway. So I'm not sure they really care. But that way you would avoid having two, Raw champions picked by both Rumble winners. So anyway, that's your Royal Rumble wrap up for 2019. Overall, a very long show, but I thought a pretty good show overall. There was plenty of good stuff to like, and for those of you who have been following along with my countdown, I've been doing this countdown now the last 10 weeks. My top 10 list of the greatest championship matches in Royal Rumble history. I wrapped it up yesterday on the podcast, and the number one match is going to be going up on YouTube this Wednesday. I'll be putting the clip here on the channel, so I won't give anything away. If you don't listen to the full show, I won't spoil it for you. But all of those clips can be found in a playlist right here on the YouTube channel. So if you click on the playlist tab, you will find a playlist that has all of them ranked, every Rumble segment up to this point. And the number one match will be going up this Wednesday. So that way you can refer back to them in the playlist very easily whenever you would like to. So definitely give that a look. Thank you for your support. As always, I will be back with more content here on the YouTube channel. Of course, next month is the Elimination Chamber. We're going to crown new women's tag team champions. So when that show comes by, we'll have a full review on YouTube as we always do. Follow me on Twitter at Solomonster if you want to vote in the poll. The poll is still up, the Royal Rumble poll. Until next time, be well, stay safe, have yourselves a fantastic week, and I will see you back here again for more Sound Off very soon. Take care, guys.